It began on an unusually steamy Tuesday, one of those days when everything feels like it has been buttered on both sides. Ordinarily, I'm fond of Tuesdays. They don't swagger like Fridays or drone like Mondays. But on this particular Tuesday, the thermometer outside my office in North Pole Heights not only burst its own top, it let out a scream that registered on three separate Richter scales. The minute hand on the clock drooped, the plastic fern curled into a question mark, and I, Detective Archibald P. Flake, 5 foot nothing, if you count the stovepipe hat and carrot nose, found myself, sweating bullets I did not technically possess. This, I muttered as a rivulet sluiced down my torso of compacted powder, is bad for business and worse for my complexion. I'm a private eye. The only kind in town, in fact. Because most snow people aren't inclined to ask questions, they're inclined to sit quietly and admire cloud shapes until spring undoes them. I'm different. A coal-limed gumshoe with a ribbon scarf, a chipped corncob pipe, and an almost pathological suspicion of warm fronts. So when Mayor Parson Icicle barged into my igloo office, his top button dribbling like a vanilla cone, I knew things were past the polite conversation stage. "Blake," he gasped, "we've got a 5-alarm situation. Mercury's rising past anything in the archives. If we don't cool this berg down immediately, the whole citizenry will be nothing but decorative puddles." He dropped a folder on my desk. The paper sizzled like fajitas. Inside were newspaper clippings, satellite photos, and a Polaroid of a fried egg cooking on the hood of a reindeer. I flicked ash from my non-existent cigarette old habit and flipped through the dossier. Heat waves aren't unheard of, but this one looks suspicious. Symmetrical spikes in temperature, microbursts of tropical humidity, and strangest of all, blistering sunshine localized right above Frostville Square, like someone had dragged the equator here for a joyride. "Who else knows about this?" I asked. "Just the city council, the weather bureau, and whichever gossip monger first noticed steam rising off the snow cones at Larry's Shaved Ice Shack," the mayor said. "The public's panicking. There's talk of mass migration to Antarctica. You're our last hope, detective." The desperation in his voice chilled me more than any breeze, which is saying something considering I was currently experiencing zero breezes. I stood carefully because one bad pivot can lop off a snowman's entire torso, and tipped my hat. "Consider the case accepted. Time is slush." I started at the scene of the first reported meltdown, Frostville Square. Normally, it's a happy bustle of snow kids lobbing hailstones, but today it looked like a retirement community for sad popsicles. My ally on the force, Sergeant Slush Bucket and Old Snowcop, whose badge was welded from a freezer magnet, met me under the melted remains of the town's ice sculpture contest. "What do we have, Sarge?" "Witnesses say the sun came out like a flamethrower at exactly 11:11 a.m. yesterday," he replied. "Radiation readings went from polite handshake to bear hug in seconds. Then," he pointed to a chalk outline shaped not unlike a puddle with a carrot floating in it, "poor Mrs. Blittenbaum. She never saw July coming." I crouched. My knees squeaked like styrofoam and examined the ground. Something glittered. Sunglasses, oversized aviators, tinted a shade called molten gold. Serial number etched on the frame, Solex 9000, I begged them. Nearby, faint footprints scorched into snow formed a path toward the alley by Hot Chuck's Chili Parlor. That was odd. Chili Parlor opens only in the off-season, when locals crave experimental spice. I followed the prints until they abruptly vanished under a manhole. Heat still radiated from the lid. Someone had gone subterranean. Someone with hot feet. Next stop, Dr. Fleury's climatology lab, because when you suspect foul meteorology, you consult your foremost weather wizard. Fleury was hunched over a cracked crystal barometer, fanning herself with a snow shovel. Her white lab coat had melted at the cuffs. "Archie, you look awful," she said, and a chunk slid off my shoulder in reply. "If this keeps up, we'll have to rename the place Wetville." I presented the sunglasses. "Ever seen this model?" Her eyes lit like LEDs behind frosted goggles. "That's high-grade solar tech, reflective on the inside, absorbent on the outside. Only one corporation makes them, Heliocorp. Their HQ's south of here beyond the warm belt." Heliocorp? I grunted. Sounds like trouble wrapped in SPF 50. She keyed data into her snow-powered computer. Their latest project is rumored to be a portable sun, a satellite array that can redirect solar rays wherever desired. Imagine a tanning salon the size of a county, weaponized. Now, we were cooking literally, unfortunately. If someone had hijacked Heliocorp's satellite, Frostville would roast like chestnuts on an open anything. I asked for satellite coordinates, she gave me an access pass and a dry ice pack for the road. Keep it on your core, she warned, and don't get too close to open flames or politicians. Same difference, I thought. I headed to the Milky Dipper, a bar carved entirely from frozen milk, where rumors flow faster than the milkshakes. Inside, condensation dripped from the stalactites, forming curdled puddles. I found Benny the Blizzard at the counter, swirling a slushie. Benny's a snowbank with a rap sheet longer than midwinter night. If something dirty happens, he usually heard the forecast. Benny, my chilled acquaintance, I said, tossing him a peppermint coin, tell me about Heliocorp. He slurped, eyes darting. Word is, some penguins swiped their satellite controls. Thought they'd invite Summer to the North Pole for a beach party. Took the remote doodad, skedaddled under a cover of night. Penguins? I raised an eyebrow, figuratively. I don't grow hair. Penguins summered in Frostville now and then, but most lacks the felonious imagination to commit meteorological mayhem. Names. King Chiller and his posse of tucks. Benny whispered. I hear they've been holed up in the old abandoned refrigerator factory on the edge of town. An abandoned refrigerator factory sounded logically ironic. The perfect place to hide a heat weapon, insulated and remote. I polished my pipe with a mitten sleeve. Benny, if this intel checks out, I'll owe you one fresh snowfall. Make it two, he bargained. Don't push your luck or I'll order a warm drizzle on your bank account, I shot back. Then trudged out before my knees liquefied entirely. Night had the decency to arrive, but the temperature refused to dip. Street lamps bent under mirage waves. I journeyed to the factory, the once proud Frostmatic ink, now a shell of rust and broken compressor coils. A sign read, "Keep out, cool zone." The irony department had clearly been furloughed. Inside the corridors echoed with metallic groans. And from the building, some from me. I pressed on, until a flicker of fluorescence revealed, to my snowy awe, a sand volleyball court covering the factory floor. Gulls squawked from rented perches, a smoothie bar advertised, Sunset Paradise Palms, and there, perched on a lifeguard stand, sporting swim trunks and a sash reading Beach Bum Supreme, was King Chiller, a penguin with more bravado than body mass. He saluted me with a neon drink umbrella. Detective Flake welcome to Club Tropicool. Cut the carnival music, Chiller, I rasped. Where's the remote? He twirled it between flippers. Sleek, chrome, with a big red button labeled Sunburst. We're making history, my frosty friend. Vacation without migration. We direct the sun, we create prime beachfront, charge admission, retire in hula skirts. I glanced at a digital readout. Local temp 93F and rising. My scarf drooped like clock hands at closing time. You're boiling thousands alive for a day at the beach. Alive. Alive. Define alive, he chirped. Snow people reform every winter. We're giving them character arcs. Tell that to Mrs. Blitzenbaum's carrot, I snarled. Negotiation was a melting prospect. I needed the element of surprise, or at least a high-powered freezer. Luck tossed me a snowball. Alone, sputtering ventilation pipe overhead labeled liquid nitrogen line. This factory still had coolant reserves for testing refrigerators. If I punctured it, I slipped my gloved hand into my pocket and palmed the dry ice pack Dr. Fleury had given me. Solid CO, cold enough to flash freeze air. A plan formed faster than black ice. I edged toward the pipe while engaging Chiller in moral debate about the ethics of forced suntans. He pontificated. I lobbed the dry ice at the pipe. It struck, cracked the brittle metal, and white fog blasted like the breath of an ancient frost dragon, flooding the court. Penguins squawked, slipping on sudden glace. I vaulted the volleyball net, awkwardly stumbled, but the effect was heroic, and seized the remote while Chiller skated helplessly. Pressing the inverse button, moon shadow, I redirected the satellite away from Frostville. The factory roof rolled back like a convertible top. A beam of concentrated sunshine swiveled south, finally blasting a remote ocean back to its rightful suntan. Instantly, the thermostat plummeted. Snow condensed out of thin air, swirling like confetti at a ticker tape parade. My hat straightened. My circles became circles again. Frostville would survive. Sirens wailed as Sergeant Bucket's task force barged in. They cuffed Penguins carefully, flippers make lousy wrists, and secured the area. Bucket clapped me on the back, nearly sending my head onto the floor. "Flake, you crazy ice cube, you did it!" "Just doing my seasonal work," I quipped, though my core temperature still rattled like dice in a Yahtzee cup. We escorted the culprits downtown, where the mayor waited beneath a freshly rebuilt snow arch. Spotlights illuminated my scuffed buttons. Reporters snapped photos, their flashes sparkling like stray snowflakes. Mayor Icicle shook my hand, which quietly refroze solid. "Detective, you've saved Frostville. How can we ever repay you?" "A municipal ordinance to keep temperatures below 32 mF on weekdays would be a start," I said, "and maybe fund Dr. Flurry's research into anti-sun umbrellas the size of city blocks. But for now, some peace and a fresh coat of powder will do." As the crowd dispersed, Dr. Flurry approached, holding 2 mugs. "Figured you could use a celebratory beverage," she said. "It's a double-chilled nog with antifreeze sprinkles." I sipped steam, not mine, curling into the air. Delicious frostbite. She looked at me over the rim. "Archie, the satellite's still up there. Someone else could hijack it." "Then keep the override code handy," I shrugged snowily. "The world's always one megalomaniac away from climate calamity. But we'll be ready." A hush settled over Frostville, the comfortable hush of snow blanketing stress and storefront alike. Icicles tuned themselves like wind chimes. Snow kids reformed their melted forts. And me? I returned to my office, placed the sunglasses on a shelf labeled Trophies of Idiocy, and scratched a new note onto my caseboard. Penguins plus Beach Dream equals bad idea. In this line of work, there are no real endings, only temperature drops. But as I puffed on my empty pipe and looked out at the soft drift under moonlight, I allowed myself a rare moment of thawing satisfaction. Then the phone rang. "Flake Investigations, first in sleet hail or legal brief," I answered. A frantic voice crackled. "Detective, it's Larry from the Shaved Ice Shack. My soft-serve machine's producing lava." I sighed, hat tilting in resignation. "On my way, but Larry, for the love of snowmen everywhere, keep it cool till I get there." I grabbed my scarf, ensuring the knot was tight. Outside, the night air glittered with frost, and for now the world was safely refrigerated. I stepped into the street, leaving crisp footprints that quickly filled with falling snow, evidence that no matter how warm things got, someone would always be around to put the chill back in crime.